Hello and welcome to my channel. This is a video I wanted to make for a while to talk about my love of Atari computers, most specifically the Atari 8-bit computers. I'm aware there are many videos out there on the topic, some which I've enjoyed greatly and others that have taught me quite a lot about the internals and generally refreshing my knowledge of electronics to make upgrades to the Ataris. Though I know more than I did back when I originally used these machines, I'm no expert, and any opinions of my own, I'm happy to be corrected on anything that I misstate in my subsequent videos as I go into detail about these systems. This part of my channel, although I may try to be informative at times, it's more about my experience and joy that I found in the past and more recently from Atari computers. I'm hoping to spark nostalgic interest perhaps in others to go and find that old Atari that you have in the loft and do something about making it usable today in 2024. And I often may look at games or parts of systems with a fresh view after about 30 to 40 years. I purposely won't initially search Google for information about specific games until I've investigated or looked at something myself, because I think the best experience is for it to be like it was back then, with limited info from manuals or literature that we had at the time, and of course no internet. So these Atari computers have played an important part in my life and have got a place in my heart since my dear father bought our first family computer back in the 80s. My interest was immediately piqued at a time when I think everyone in the family would agree that I got the most use out of the machine. While my siblings got bored of playing the game so much, I started looking at books with simple basic computer programs you could type in, and later on magazines with listings and information on coding in basic and machine language. I remember the early days typing listings in with my dad. One of us would type and the other would take turns reading the lines of basic code. And when we finished, we'd type run, perhaps after saving first. And inevitably there'd be an error on the screen, syntax error at line XYZ. Often we'd check the line concerned, we'd find a typo. And once I discovered we could list individual lines of the program, programs sometimes run corrected when we could narrow in on those errors. More often than not, the errors were more obscure, and either the line was not listed or the program would result in an error because another line was affecting the line that it actually errored on. And there was odd behaviour. It didn't actually crash the game out, but we obviously had something to debug. I soon found that I had an aptitude and also gained pleasure from troubleshooting and fixing these programs, getting rid of the errors and getting a working result. And I greatly enjoyed the time spent with my dad doing all of this. I definitely feel this was the start of hobby and interest that developed my technical skills that I now use in my career, and I have my dad to thank for helping me, setting me on that road. So over the years I've had more than one Atari computer, and of course I've had a number of PCs since the early days of when they became more standard, most commonly used architecture, beside Macs of course. So just as an aside, there's a URL I'll share in the comments that actually there was a history where Atari influenced the early IBM PCs. Soon after the Atari 400 and 800 computers came out, Atari made a proposal to IBM's chairman Frank Gehry in July of 1980, basically saying if IBM wished to have a PC of their own, Atari would like to build it for them. So this proposal was actually taken to IBM's management committee, and they pronounced it the dumbest thing they've ever heard of. So indeed Atari and IBM would have made quite an odd couple, but at the same time the idea wasn't something dismissed lightly by IBM's management, and they then off the back of that decided to assemble a team to put together a detailed proposal for how IBM could build a PC themselves, and they needed to come back with that in just 1 month. So there we go. Could have been all very different, but the Atari 400 and 800 computers were, basically precursors to the early PCs we see today in terms of being not just a gaming machine, but an all-round computer for business and personal use. Briefly talk about the Atari history. outarofgaming.com/Atari-consoles. So Atari was founded in 1972, initially with single-use gaming machines. It all started with Pong and other single-game devices, which you can see some details of here. I was too young to really appreciate this. I was born in 1976. So we go forward. Never had one of these, but the biggest multi-purpose, or the first multi-purpose console was the Atari VCS, later known as the Atari 2600. I do actually have one of these, which I've acquired recently and done some work to upgrade to modern graphics. If anyone's interested, please say in the comments. I can create a video about that. So the 2600 was around for quite a long time. It had the original Woody edition that you see there. There was a heavy sixer and then a light sixer edition of the Woody, and then later there was sort of more cheaply produced versions, more sort of plastic based. The Atari tried further with consoles with the Atari 5200 in 1982, and later the 7800, which was around the time that the NES came out, and that was pretty stiff competition, and I'm afraid that it's kind of interesting machine, but it fell short on its sort of graphical and sound, certainly the sound abilities, because it had the same TIA sound as the 2600. So unfortunately that was beaten by the NES. Atari continued in the console and handheld market in latter years with the Jaguar. Lynx as well was a handheld, and also in more recent times there's been sort of recreation of the Atari brand, as it were. I'm really going to go into sort of who owns Atari now. It's all very complicated, but there's been various attempts, the Atari VCS, the new 2600 Plus, so there's details of all of that on this site. Oh yes, 2600 Plus there in 2023, quite recent. So we're going to skim by a lot of the individual links, some of the individual products that Atari created, because what we're interested in here is Atari computers. So in 1979 the Atari 400 came out. It was quite limited on RAM. The keyboard wasn't particularly nice, but it was a great sort of all-rounding computer machine. It wasn't just about games. It could do many other things too. It could connect to many other peripherals. Later came the Atari 800, which had increased RAM, better keyboard, very nice looking machine. I don't own one of these. I kind of wish I did, but I haven't got the urge to spend sort of £300 plus on a good condition 800. So then Atari moved into the XL range. The 1200 XL in 1983 wasn't a particularly successful machine, and later they created the reduced size Atari 800 XL and the tiny Atari 600 XL. I have one of these because it's a very nice small form factor, but the one that we had was the 800, which is not actually pictured here, or is it? Yes, the Atari 800 XL. So this was the machine that was bought in our family when I was very young, in the early 80s, 83, 84, that sort of time frame. And this is the machine that I owned at the time and is still working today, that a lot of my videos will be based around. So there we go. Later the design changed for the 65XE and the 130XE. I believe certainly the 65XE and this model were particularly popular in Europe, where the 8-bit machines were popular for a lot longer, even when Atari moved to their 16-bit ST range. And the styling was very similar here to what eventually became the ST, which you can see there, which was the machine that I owned for most of my teens. We may talk about that in later videos. This we will focus on the Atari 8-bit machines. And of course, yes, at the end of in 1987, Atari tried to make the computer, I guess, appeal more to the console market. Although they had the, as I said, the 5200 and the 7800, which were purely consoles. This XEGS, Atari XE gaming system, had console-like keys. It had a breakout keyboard and it had a light gun. So this was trying to be an all-rounder computer, but also focus on the gaming market as well. And more on this website. It's quite a good rundown of all the Atari systems. You've got the later sort of TTs and the Falcon 030, which was an incredible machine that not many people were lucky enough to own. Okay, so why do I love Ataris and why am I creating this part of the channel? I think the real experience of gaming on Atari and the look and feel of the machine is the sort of experience you don't really get from modern gaming. And of course, there's a lot of nostalgia at play here that, of course, the younger generation would not have or perhaps understand. Although I do think many of the games have endured and still can be a lot of fun to play today. And you have to remember a couple of things. Firstly, our expectations of the computers at the time were much lower. These machines were state of the art at the time, and although the graphics were simple and often only represented real things with blocky sprites, this for many was the first time they'd interacted with their televisions to play video games or perhaps something a little more productive, as opposed to the screen being only a passive medium for them before. That said, also have great appreciation to this day of what programmers back then could do to achieve given the limitations of the hardware, but also more recently with modern retro enthusiasts have been able to squeeze even more out of these machines with new homebrew software, further push them to their limits. Okay, I couldn't find any specific old photos of my original Atari from when I was younger, but it seemed to creep in a number of old family photos in the background. There's a few of them here, being used at the top there in some sort of gathering, and yeah, some bowl of something propped on the screen. Old CRT TV screen there. You notice the tuners popped out because it's incredibly hard to tune it in and get a stable picture, so we're often tweaking that all the time. And we've got an Atari 1010 tape recorder above it there, with red case tape. I think that might be an Eastern Front or something like that. So I never had a disk drive. I wasn't that privileged back in the day, although I have played around with disk drives with the big 5¼ inch floppies more recently. So games took ages to load, and a whole screeching sound that you used to hear, which like the sound of a modem, embedded into my memory. So yeah, you can see also a stack of tapes in the bottom middle there. I can recognise a few of the titles. I think that's Ninja there. I see there's a manual at the bottom there for Miner 2049er, which was a favourite game back in the day. So yeah, so that is my original Atari from prehistory. And if I just bring this up somewhere, this is how it looks now. Cleaned this up significantly. It became a bit of a labour of love when I had a little bit more time on my hands and working remotely more around sort of 2020 and beyond. This was something that kept me sane, spending a bit of time restoring this machine. So I had it completely apart, all the keycaps pulled off and cleaned individually. The plastic of the case stripped down and cleaned and washed. A little bit of retro brighting to try and get the colour better to the original, because the case was more yellowed than that. So yeah, very sort of pleased with how it looks, and real testament to the hardware of the time that it still works to this day. Unfortunately, a few scratches there on the brushed aluminium keys and a bit of a indentation on one of them. They were actually worse than that before I got to them, but that's an area that I can maybe do something with later to make it look pristine. Okay, so there it is, and shortly oh yes, there is the side 3 cartridge, which is one of the modern updates that you can get. Fits in the Atari cartridge slot and allows you to load software from an SD card emulating old floppy images. So even though I've discarded, unfortunately, regret that I lost all my tapes, still have a few original cartridges, and I now have this device, which is one of the handful of ways that we've found to get software onto these machines in the modern day, without having to load from a screechy tape for hours or rely on old discs that may or may not work from back in the 80s. A quick look at the back of the machine, rundown of the ports, SIO port on the left there for peripherals, parallel interface there, wasn't used much back in the day, then the graphics adapter, and then there's 3 additional ports there, 3.5mm jack for stereo audio output, which is one of the upgrades that I was able to do to this machine, only mono back in the day, a DVI digital video output, which was an internal upgrade, and a USB port for keyboard stroke wireless keyboard, which allows you to use remote keyboards instead of the Atari. Not the best of case modifications to get some of those in, but this has become a working workhorse machine, upgrades machine. I have also acquired a stock Atari, which I intend to keep stock on the side, so I will always have one that hasn't had this sort of butchering done. Maybe I can make this look a bit better in time, but it's working. And yeah, and on the right, the power input there. It's recommended in modern times to not use original power adapters or certain models of them, which can damage the Atari through sort of over voltage and the like. So I have a USB power supply, which is freely available on eBay. Okay, here we are, about to open the machine up. Let's have a look at what's been changed inside. Okay, see, I'm propping that up on the right there. You have to be quite careful removing the ribbon cable to the keyboard on the top part of the case, and I try and do that as little as possible, but as we're doing it here to show you the insides of the machine, I've removed that and taken that away. So, I believe we are starting to look at the left. We have the Sophia 2 video upgrade, which completely replaces the GTIA graphics chip and a ribbon cable to a DVI video output. The earlier Sophia was a piggyback onto the old chip. This one completely replaces graphics. Then I've started pointing there at the USB interface, which goes to the AKI Atari keyboard interface, which piggybacks with a Pokey audio and input chip of the Atari. I haven't actually got the Pokey in there at the moment though, because instead of piggybacking that, we're piggybacking an upgrade, Pokémax, which provides stereo audio output to the Atari, which is supported by certain modified games and demos that have come out since that device became available. And it's also good that the Pokémax is being manufactured, because it's incredibly difficult to get the old Poké chips now. People used to take them out of arcade machines. Certain cartridges for the 2600, such as Ball Blazer, had a Pokey in, and people used to rip the cartridges apart to steal those as well for replacements. Okay, so there's various connections for the 3.5mm jack, and feeds to the board from the keyboard interface to provide the various signals for reset, start, select option, which were custom keys beyond what you'd have on a standard keyboard, and they're mapped to the F keys on your USB wireless keyboard. Over here we're looking at the Ultimate 1MB upgrade, that white card to the right. That provides like a BIOS on the machine, as well as the memory upgrade. And also I'm pointing there to ribbon cables which run to where used to be the OS-ROM chip and the basic chip. Those have been replaced by chip sockets. I had to desolder the chips and solder in new sockets, which take headers from those ribbons, which ultimately allow that Ultimate 1MB device to switch in and out the ROMs for the basic, so you can use different versions of basic other than the stock Atari basic, and the OS, so you can run various revisions of Atari and other operating systems if you so wish. So very versatile device, the Ultimate 1MB. Also works well in conjunction with the Side 3 card that I showed earlier. That cartridge can then run hard drive images, and the Ultimate 1MB emulates the parallel bus interface PBI hard drives, which can just be run off of an SD card instead of a physical device. So before I move away from this section about my original Atari 800XL and the upgrades that I've made to it, I was very pleased to be able to, a few years ago, show what I'd done to my Atari to my dear dad, and give him the opportunity to have a look. And there he is playing old favourite Pac-Man, and he used to play this for hours, and you can see the grimace on his face there. I think the muscle memory kicked in, and yeah, he is enjoying himself, I promise. So I think I'm very similar, as you might see from some of my videos, when I'm concentrating on a game. So yeah, that was really nice to let him see what I'd done, and let him have a bit of nostalgic time as well. So what should you expect from this part of my channel? Well, my intention is to further explore some of the games that I used to play as a child, where I want to return to them fresh as much as possible without looking at videos and really see what I remember about playing them. Demo some of that. Also, a little about the Atari upgrade scene that I've become a little bit sucked into in recent years, and perhaps a few hardware videos going into details of some of the modifications I've done, or even perhaps live modifications that I'm going to do in the future. I think the best thing to do is if I just show you some highlights of what I intend to do, and yep. If you enjoyed looking at this video and what I'm talking about, please like the video, and greatly appreciate it if you'd subscribe to my channel. It really helps and would encourage me to produce more content. So here we go. Here is a little demo of what you should expect to see on my channel. Thank you, everyone.